Does that help at all? It took me off of mute. How do you like that? What do I know? The environmental and health impacts of plastics, and I'm going to introduce these wonderful people in just a moment. So what I need to do is figure out how to change slides. Do you guys know how to do that? Usually the arrows do it, but the arrows are not doing it. How do you change slides? I've just learned how to go off of mute. Now I can learn. Oh, I have to do this. Okay, usually it's on. Yes, okay. Wow, it changed. Okay, so we are partners with Ollie, and this lady is rescuing me over and over again. And we are a 3-layer Sierra Club. If there are on the table little pieces of paper where you can join Sierra Club, if you join National for $15 or whatever, you will get a beautiful magazine every month that will tell you international trips. It will do wonderful analysis of problems such as microplastics, et cetera. The state chapter, which is out of Raleigh, is dealing with things like the UK and the European Union seems to think that cutting down our southeastern forests and making them into chips and burning them is a sustainable energy force. And we're trying to deal with that and trying to get the governor or whatever to outlaw that. But right now, private land can sell their trees and make them into chips and sell them to Europe. We want to gratefully acknowledge that we are on Cherokee land, and we are very respectful. They have been harboring and taking care of this land for generations and generations. We have our program here every first Wednesday of the month. It's also on a Zoom link. Please go to our website, which is WNC Sierra Club at the very bottom, and sign up for our newsletter. It comes twice a month, and it will give you the alerts, and it will give you a Zoom link if you don't want to come in person. And we will record, as you saw, we are recording over and over again, and we will post, and you can go back for the last 3 years and get programs on bears and on different hikes. So we've got a lot of good stuff. We have a kids adventure club, and if any of you guys are interested, right now we have a program every Monday or Tuesday with Asheville Middle School, and it's quite successful. We have 9 kids, and every week we partner and we have a list of programs, like we'll take kids to the Arboretum and pet snakes. How many of you guys have petted a snake? All right, you're our people, come on out. And it's really fun to see the faces on these kids. So think about joining that, because we always need volunteers. We also have our hikes coming up. Saturday, October 11th, will be a Mountain to Sea Trail hike with David Reed, and it will be out towards Bent Creek. October 22nd at 8:30, how about that, on Wednesday, Rocky Fork State Park. And if you haven't been up to the border of Tennessee, it's a beautiful, beautiful park. We are having a fundraiser. Ken Brame, would you like to tell us?
Thank you. How many of you are just totally frustrated with what's going on, or scared, or with what's happening in the world right now? I think all of us, right? Well, yeah, I wish I could say I've got a magic solution to make that all go away. I don't. But there is one solution, and that's our vote. And the Sierra Club is really focusing in North Carolina right now. Nationally, there's hundreds of millions of dollars are going to be spent on those races, and our other folks around the country, or Sierra Club chapters, are working on those contested races. But here in North Carolina, we've had a situation where we've had an anti-environmental majority in the state legislature, in the state house, state senate, since 2010. And it's time to change that. We've got a situation where we are unable to sustain vetoes because of 4 Democrats that are helping and voting with Republicans to override vetoes. So Sierra Club PAC has a plan this year, for next year. And that plan is, first of all, to go after those 4 turncoats that are voting to roll back environmental protections, that are voting to take away requirements for Duke to have more renewable energy. And we've identified the 4, and we want to go after them in a primary. We also, next year, if you think back to every election after a presidential election, the party out of power tends to do well. And recent polling in North Carolina shows that if the election were today, that Democrats have a 4-point advantage on who people would vote for. What does that mean? Well, we've done the analysis of all the election results from last fall. There are 3 state Senate seats that are the Republican won with 51%, 52%, 53%. I'm using the word Republican. Unfortunately, that currently means anti-environment, folks. So we have a chance to pick up 3 seats. We only need 1 to break the supermajority and to sustain the governor's veto, and we want to pick up at least 2 so that somebody flakes, we're still set. But I want to pick up all 3 because they're doable in a Democratic-leaning year. In the state House, there are 5 seats that are within that 3 percentage point margin. Anywhere from 50-50, 51%, 52, 53% is what they won by last time. We can win those seats. And so I'm really focused on, how do we do it? Well, Sierra Club has a PAC. We get engaged. Last fall, we gave $5,000 to all of our targeted candidates in the closest races in the state. We want to do that again. We also want to be able to run social media ads targeting environmental voters to make sure they know who the environmental candidates are down ballot for the state House and state Senate. And to do that, we're having a big fundraising event, and it's October 16th, 5:30 to 7 at the Unitarian Universalist Congregation on Edwin Place here in Asheville. So we'd love to have you come out and help us out. Also, if you're on our Sierra Club mailing list, you'll be getting an invitation for that as well, and a way to make a contribution in case you can't make it in person. Or if you want to do that and you can't make it, see me after the meeting, and I'll be happy to help you out there. Thank you.
Stay right there for just a minute. And on top of that, well, could I see a show of hands? How many of you think you might show? We will have speakers there of all the elected people that we have helped elect. We have, help me out, Ken, a state judge.
Judge Arrowwood, who's on the Court of Appeals, who's running for re-election, will be here.
And all of our local people, which brings me into, we need your help for an election. Do you know that we're having an election November 1st and November 4th? How many of you knew we were having an election? Did you know that? About 3 of you. Well, guess what? It's only for Woodfin and only for Weaverville, but you know how important our sister cities are in terms of the health of the French Broad River, I mean, just the help of the whole environment. And those of you who have voted in the area, you know that Sierra Club endorses the whole list of candidates for the election. And we're going to be standing there for early voting as Saturday, November 1st, and Election Day is November 4th in Weaverville at the Town Hall in Lake Louise, the Weaverville Community Center, and another place. But we would love to have you take a shift, take the cards, and just say, hi, may I give you the environmental candidates endorsed by Sierra Club? And let me tell you, we were able to flip in the last election Woodfin, and that made all the difference in terms of protecting the French Broad River. We stopped a huge development that was just going to pour down into the French Broad River. Can I see a show of hands? Is anybody interested in helping us with those? Okay, let me ask somebody to go around and get some names. So would you raise your hand again, and Ken is going to take your name and we will be in touch with you. I think the lady in green. Yeah, interested in helping with the election, if you can. Okay. Anybody else that might be interested in the election? Okay, well, we will recruit continually. All right, so Our next program, which is in this room 1 month from now, the first Wednesday, will be the French Broad River 1 year after Helene. And if you were here a year ago, weren't we all with Helene? Lisa Raleigh of Riverlink presented what happened, and now she's going to present a year later what happened during this year and what does it look like for future. And now, but let me give you a heads up also, December is not going to be a program, it's going to be a potluck at the Unitarian Church. The second Wednesday, December 10th, would like you to bring a potluck and enjoy, and it's a way to kick back and enjoy, and we'll kind of talk about the year in review. How many of you are interested in coming to a potluck and bringing some food? Oh, great. And you know where the Unitarian Church is. It's 1 Edwin Place. All right now it is my privilege. No, it's not. I want to also ask you to consider, we have some petitions. This is to put your name on it, asking Walmart and Ingles and the big box stores to consider stopping using single-use plastic, stopping using those grocery bags. And we are trying, we almost had a state law, but it got blocked by our wonderful legislature. And now we're going in person and asking each store, and you probably know some stores that have just voluntarily stopped using those single-use plastics. So if you were going to pass that around, and in the meantime, I'm introducing Dr. Chris Mauck. Chris, if you'll come on up. And she is a doctor, and she has been a practicing physician in her earlier years, but she now has been studying and working with preventative medicine and has done a lot of innovative work back in the day, working with birth control and all kinds of stuff, but now she's interested in plastics and what does plastics do to you? And you've got a pamphlet right in front of you that tells you what they do to you. So Chris? Oh, well, what do I know? Well, then Miss Anna, come on up and introduce yourself, girl.
Thanks, Judy. My name is Anna Alsobrook. How's this? Is this okay? Okay. My name is Anna Alsobrook. I'm the French Broad Riverkeeper. I work at another nonprofit called MountainTrue. We are, hold on, I'm not a great multitasker. Oh, thank you. I forgot I had my own presentation. Okay. We are our own nonprofit. We work with Sierra Club and partner with Sierra Club quite a bit, and especially on plastics. But we do all sorts of stuff around Western North Carolina. We've worked on a whole slew of issues from coal ash to crypto mining, from public lands to Clean Water Act violations. I am the French Broad Riverkeeper. And what that means is my job is to find sources of pollution within the French Broad watershed and work to get those fixed. That looks very different every single day. Sometimes that's doing a river cleanup. Sometimes it's taking water quality samples to push for better policies. Sometimes it's holding a polluter accountable. It just kind of varies depending on what is happening on any given moment. But thank y'all for having me here. I've been working with Chris and Ken and Sierra Club members for, I think, probably 7 years now on plastics pollution. And how it started was several years ago. I remember we were doing a river cleanup on the Swannanoa River, and the amount of plastic and plastic bags especially we pulled out of the river was really a kick in the gut moment. Like, why are all these pieces of plastic in our river? What can we do to get these things out for the long haul? And that's really when I started researching about the plastics issue and started recognizing it as an issue in itself. And so tonight I'm here to tell you or talk about why plastics is even an issue. And then I'll hand it over to Chris to talk more about the health impacts of plastics and microplastics, which we'll go into earlier or later. I have given this presentation to Sierra Club before, so I'm going to go very quickly because what Chris has to say is much more important, but I'm happy to dig into anything that is interesting to you at any point in time, and we'll have room for questions at the end. But I imagine some of y'all have seen some of this information already, so I don't want to be super redundant, but if something is askew, feel free to yell at me and tell me to reel it back and give some more context. So there's 4 main reasons why plastics are an issue. One, they are directly tied to the climate crisis. A lot of people don't really know, but plastics are made from a byproduct of hydrofracking. And what we've seen is as hydrofracking has brought down the cost of natural gas, the price of plastic has also gone down. Plastics and manufacturers are using this plastic and creating what's called single-use plastic items. These are items that we might use for a few minutes before we throw them out, whether that's in the recycling can or in the trash. And I do want to make a pretty big distinction between single-use plastics, which are items we use one time and throw them away, versus other types of plastics that we might use every single day. So there's pieces of like equipment in the hospital that are plastic. There's, safety equipment in cars and things like that. There's a very big distinction between, when I say I'm against plastic, that's not really it. I'm against single-use plastics. So kind of keep that context in the back of your mind. So it's directly related to climate. If plastics was a country, it'd be the 5th largest emitter of greenhouse gases in the world. What we're starting to see too, maybe let me go down, is as we're moving as a society towards more energy efficient and sustainable ways of energy and transportation, oil and gas is heavily investing in plastics production as kind of a lifeline. And the majority of that investment is towards single-use plastics. This graph is really hard to see, and I actually need to update it. But this is oil demand growth for the company BP for the years 2020 to 2040 by sector. And the sector on the far left, which is the highest demand growth, is plastics. That far outcompetes power, transportation, manufacturing exponentially. So you can see they're heavily relying on plastics production. The one thing that's not in here is AI and that kind of thing for energy production. And so I'm curious how that will relate to plastics, but that'll be a different presentation for a different day. So the second way the second reason plastic is an issue is because it's obviously a huge source of litter. Just because the nature of plastics, they tend to be flimsy, lightweight, they're easily carried by the wind. Despite our best intentions as consumers, as environmentalists, as citizens, about a third of plastic winds up in the environment. And when it does, it succumbs to all the weather patterns, the friction of wind, and what that does is it breaks it down into microplastics, which Chris will talk about in a minute. But there is a staggering statistic that I would like to throw out there. By the year 2030, which is 5 years from now, there'll be 1 pound of plastic in the ocean for every 3 pounds of fish. By the year 2050, that number reverses. So 3 pounds of plastic for every 1 pound of fish in the ocean. We've been taking microplastic samples in the French Broad since 2021. I only have 2021 to 2023 data in this slideshow right now because I have not yet done 2024 data because of the hurricane. But I will say we've found microplastics in every water sample we've taken, and the number of microplastics has doubled in those 3 years. So the more plastic we're putting out into the world, the more it's ending up in our environment, and the more microplastics end up basically everywhere. A lot of people ask, why don't we just put all this stuff in the recycling and then it'll turn into like new and better products? And the answer is plastics recycling is really complicated. We have super high recycling rates for both aluminum and cardboard, upwards of 70%. Plastics is so complicated, it's less than 5% of plastics actually gets recycled, if it makes it to the recycling facility. This photo is a picture of Nancy Lawson. She was one of the owners of Kirby, Curbside Services, which is our recycling facility here or in Woodfin. It basically serves most of Western North Carolina, but they spend $10,000 a month taking unrecyclable plastics from their facility to the landfill because that's where it has to go. So the plastics industry wants you to think, let's just recycle our way out of this problem, but it's not feasible. There's too many different types of plastics. It's made up of too many different types of resins to melt it all down or bring it all down and then put it into other types of products. It's too costly and it's just not very feasible. And then the third reason for plastics being an issue is because of equity. Most places where there are facilities that produce plastic and the chemicals that go into plastic are in communities of color and low-income communities. This is a photo of St. James Parish in Louisiana. It's also called Cancer Alley. The number of plastics production facilities and petrochemical companies down in this area is over 200. And the amount of cancer in this area is exponentially greater than other places in the US. On the flip side, it's an equity issue because of where plastic ends up after it's what we call end of life. So, ideally, a piece of plastic gets tossed in the recycling and it gets recycled into something else, or it lands in the landfill. Oftentimes it ends up, if it can't be recycled, it can get exported out to countries, lower income countries like Laos, Vietnam, who accept our waste, and we over here, we call it recycling. So it's ending up in countries that don't have the infrastructure to deal with the impact of plastic waste. And then finally, the human health reasons, and I'm gonna pass it to Chris after this. Plastics don't ever biodegrade. They just break down into smaller and smaller pieces until you can no longer see them with the naked eye. The smaller the piece, we're learning, the smaller you look, the more there are of them. The more plastics we produce, the more microplastics end up in the environment. And these are probably the most ubiquitous things on the planet at the moment. They have been found in every part of the human body. They have been found in every part of the globe, from the deepest part of the ocean to the top of the highest mountain, to really remote parts of deserts. They have been found everywhere. And we're seeing them in the human body. And there's probably a study that comes out every week or 2 weeks that links the presence of microplastics in the human body to some kind of chronic health issue. So on that note, I'm gonna send it over to Chris. Is that okay with you? Okay, and she'll kind of dig into the science behind what we're all talking about.
Take note of that picture of the plastic bag monster. I love that. Now it's on, okay. So while we're changing slides, let me just say I am a physician. I'm board certified in preventive medicine and public health. I spent most of my career in pharmaceutical research working on contraceptives and HIV prevention methods, but I fairly recently got interested in the health effects of microplastics And I lead a small group in this area that has as its mission getting out the word about the health effects of microplastics. We put together the brochures that are in front of you. We give talks like this. We're on a podcast. We're on a radio show. And we need more people to help us. So if you'd like to join us, see me after the talk. So what I hope to do today is share with you what I have learned so far, which isn't everything, but hopefully is enough to make you a little uncomfortable and inspired to do changes in your life that work for you that will decrease your own exposure to microplastics and therefore decrease demand and therefore help protect the environment. So how do I do this? Okay, so I'm going to talk about what microplastics are, what they're doing to us, and what we can do about them. To do this, you have to understand, as Anna said, that microplastics are simply small pieces of plastic. They either were made deliberately very, very small, or they are small pieces of larger plastic things that have broken off. So you have to understand plastic to understand the risks of microplastics. So what is in plastic? The major component is fossil fuels, methane, ethane, propane. But added to this are up to 16,000, I'm trying to see my slides at the same time I'm talking, up to 16,000 chemical additives and processing agents. Only about 25% of these have been studied for their effects on human health. And as someone who has done pharmaceutical research for 30 years, and I know what it takes to get a drug approved to show that it's safe and effective, this is astonishing. You can have all these chemicals that are added to products that you use every day, and we don't know anything about what they do to you. But we do know of the ones that have been studied, most of them are toxic. These are not necessarily bound to the fossil fuel components. They can come out by leaching, in other words, by getting wet, or by volatilizing, going into the air, or by being rubbed off, like if you have plastic clothes, which are most of our clothes. Here are some examples. Plasticizers like phthalates are added for flexibility. Is there? Two left. I was hoping I could see my slides here. Anyway, they're added for flexibility. For example, they're found in a lot of food packaging, although this has been decreasing lately. Also bisphenols like BPA, these are added for strength, and an example is so-called disposable water bottles. And then PFAS, or forever chemicals that you've probably heard about. These are added for their non-stick tendencies, and they're found in non-stick cookware, for example. Most of the health effects from plastics are from these chemicals because they have not been studied, as I said, and they just are so potently toxic. These are the different types of plastic. You've seen all these numbers before. You'll notice that, let's see, I do have a pointer here. A lot of them are polyethylene. This one is polyethylene terephthalate. This one is high-density polyethylene. This one is low-density polyethylene. We also have polyvinyl chloride, polypropylene, polystyrene, and then this category, number 7, is kind of everything else. This group is a water bottle group. This group is the other kinds of bottle group, and these are the things that are mostly recycled. Polyvinyl chloride is found in strange things like shower curtains and credit cards. You may have heard that you eat a credit card's worth of plastic every month or something like that. That has been debunked. That is a way overestimate, but you'll hear about the spoon in your brain in just a minute. Low-density polyethylene, these are grocery bags, and the plastic itself is recyclable, but the problem with these is that when they go to the recycling plant, they get caught in everything, they jam the machines, and that's why you don't put them in your recycling bin. You take them to grocery stores, and I'll talk about that in a minute too, where they really go. Polypropylene is things like yogurt containers and plastic spoons. Polystyrene is styrofoam. I'll say more about that in a minute. So this is a plastic pollution life cycle. It starts with extraction of the fossil fuels and then production of the plastic, the addition of the chemicals I just mentioned, and then point of sale, and then consumers using them, and then disposing of them either through recycling or through throwing them away. And then they may end up getting dumped or burned. Every stage in this has an adverse effect on humans and also other life forms. So what are microplastics and nanoplastics? Microplastics, these are both just simply defined by size. Microplastics are plastics that are less than 5 millimeters in size, or about the size of a pencil eraser. Nanoplastics are just a subset of microplastics. They're even smaller. They're smaller than a human hair. What really shocked me and got me interested in this is that nanoplastics can get into cells. I didn't know that, and they wreak havoc when they get into cells. Where do they come from? There are two main sources, as I said. Some of them come from big things that are breaking down into little pieces. Some of these are single-use plastic, which Anna was talking about. This is responsible for 40% of plastic production and 60% of plastic waste. And examples are plastic bags, plastic bottles, plastic wrap, plastic cutlery, things like that. You use them once, throw them away. The average plastic bag is used for 10 minutes. Then there also are things that are large items that are not single use. We use them more than once. And these are things like clothing, tires, plastic cutting boards, and other things in your kitchen. And then the other thing is the things that are intentionally made very small. And this includes microbeads in cosmetics, microbeads in face scrubs and toothpaste. The ones that are designed to be washed off have actually been banned since 2015, but they're still found in some of these other things. And then plastic pellets, which are made in very small balls, and then they're made into other plastic things. I think they're called nurdles. Why should we care about microplastics? They've been found in virtually every organ in the human body. They're almost certainly in yours. They also are present in the reproductive tract, and this should be of special concern. They've been found in vaginal fluid, uterus, ovaries, semen, reproductive hormones, and also, especially concerning, during and after pregnancy. They've been found in the placenta, amniotic fluid, breast milk, infant feces. They can cross the placenta. So how do they get into people? Through the air. We breathe these in from food and food packaging, from bottles, especially disposable water bottles, and from surfaces that we touch that have essentially plastic dust on them. As Anna said, they don't biodegrade, they don't break down into their component parts, they just break into little pieces. And these pieces include all the chemicals I mentioned that were used to originally make the plastic. So how could they hurt us? They could damage cells. I said they get into cells and they still have sharp edges. They contain all those toxic chemicals that were used to make the plastic. They can also carry germs and pesticides into cells. Nanoplastics, as I said, are small enough to enter cells, and there they can mimic or disrupt hormone activity. And what I mean by that is they can pretend to be estradiol, for example, or testosterone or insulin or some of those things, or they can disrupt the natural hormones that are already there. They can interfere with their natural activity. And this affects thyroid, affects glucose metabolism, fertility, can lead to cardiovascular disease, all kinds of problems. They also cause cellular stress, which leads to DNA damage, cancer, and cell death. So before I go into an example of problems in humans, I want to say that this is a sort of an emerging science, and a lot of the data comes from lab studies where they studied cell lines and added plastics to them and found out what happened, and also animal studies. But in humans, there are 3 types of studies. One of them you can't do, 2 of them you can. The one you can't do is try to find a group of people who have no microplastics anywhere in their body, which is almost impossible. But if you could find these people, you could divide them into 2 groups. You could keep one group as it is. You could expose the other group to microplastics and see what happens. You can't do that because you can't find anybody who doesn't have any. And also, if you think microplastics are damaging, you can't ethically expose a group to them. So you can't do those. But you can do 2 other kinds of studies. You can do a study where you look just at a certain body system, and you can find people who don't have it in that body system and others who do, and follow them and see what happens. I'll show you that in a minute. The other is you can find groups of people who have a certain disease and another group that doesn't have that disease, try to equate them as much as possible, and then see if there are more microplastics found in the group that has disease. And I'll show you a couple examples of that. And Anna's right, there are papers coming out pretty much every day with this kind of stuff. This one you may have heard of. This was a study in 257 patients who weren't having symptoms of any kind, but they were found to have a blood clot in their carotid artery, and it was removed. And in almost 60% of those patients, microplastics were found in their blood clot because they had been circulating in the blood. When they did electron microscopy, they saw these jagged-edged foreign particles inside the white blood cells and between the cells. And then they followed them for not quite 3 years and found that the patients with microplastics in their plaques had a 4.5-fold higher risk of heart attack, stroke, or death from any cause compared with those who don't have microplastics or didn't have microplastics. And this is after controlling for the things that lead you to have heart attacks and strokes, like obesity and diabetes and things like that. Another example, in a 2016 to 24 study, and these dates are important, of the frontal cortex of the brain, which is the part used for judgment and decision-making, of 52 people who had died, they found that the amount of microplastics in the 2024 brains was about 50% greater than in the 2016 brains, reflecting a 50% increase in microplastics in the environment over just 8 years. On average, here's the spoon thing, on average, 4.9 grams of microplastics were found, about the same as a plastic spoon. I can't even imagine that or visualize it. They found that people with dementia had 3 to 5 times more microplastic in their brains than people without dementia. There are two interpretations to this, and I do need to say that association is not the same as causality. You may have heard of that. We do see associations like this between microplastics and disease. It doesn't really prove causality, but when we see enough of this, we can kind of assume there is definitely a relationship. But with this particular situation, we do know that people with dementia have leaky blood-brain barriers, and so it's possible that the higher levels of microplastics found in their brain were the result of their disease as opposed to the cause of it. But it could be that the microplastics played a role in the development of their disease. Another example, the placentas from 43 pregnant women were examined for microplastics. 13 of those pregnancies had been complicated by fetal growth restriction, and microplastics were found in all of those. They also were associated with lower newborn assessment scores. Of the 30 normal pregnancies, they found microplastics in only 3. So is this a problem that's going to go away? I think you're pretty sure the answer is no. And this is something that Anna alluded to too. Plastic manufacturing started in the 1950s, and they've made on average about 2 million tons a year at that time. By 2022, 475 million tons were being made every year. So that was an over 200-fold increase in that many years. Altogether, 10 billion tons have been made since that time. Of those 10 billion, 8 billion are still around. The fossil fuel companies, as Anna said, they're foreseeing a decrease in demand for fossil fuels due to increasing use of renewable energy and electric cars. They want to replace this lost revenue with plastic revenue. Plastic production is expected to double by 2040, that's 15 years from now, and triple by 2060, that's 35 years from now. Think about how old your grandkids might be in 15 years. So recycling, as Anna said, will not solve this. Less than 10% of plastics worldwide are recycled. Recycling takes energy and creates its own pollution. Most of plastics end up in landfills where they stay for hundreds of years, leaching chemicals into the air and contributing to air pollution, especially when they're incinerated. A lot of it's shipped to developing countries, as Anna said. The remainder becomes litter in our streets and our own French Broad, as she said, where it breaks down into microplastics. So what is the answer? The answer, as Anna said, is reducing production, and there are several ways that this can be done. The first is by government action. Don't laugh. The goal would be to put a cap on plastics production, to ban or add fees for use of single-use plastics, and to make companies responsible for the end product. It's called end production responsibility, I think, and it means that plastics companies have to come up with a way to deal with the plastics after they're used. If you live in Western North Carolina, these are your U.S. congressional representatives, and if you live here, these are your state representatives, and if you don't know how to find them, if you don't live here, these are the websites to find them. So there are some current attempts at legislation on both the federal and the state level. On the federal level, there's a Microplastic Safety Act. This was introduced in July of this year by both Democrats and Republicans in both houses of Congress, which I think is pretty impressive. And it would require the FDA to conduct a study on the health effects of microplastics. At the moment, it's in the House Committee on Energy and Commerce. At the state level, the North Carolina Microplastics Study Act was introduced in April of this year by Democrats. It would direct something called the North Carolina Collaboratory Funding Agency to study the negative impacts of microplastics in North Carolina water and recommend strategies for addressing this. And this has been referred to the Committee on Appropriations. So there's another global effort that is kind of a sad story. This is the Global Plastics Treaty. This was an effort on the part of the United Nations Environmental Assembly starting in 2022, and they wanted to create an internationally legally binding treaty to reduce plastic pollution, which sounds absolutely fantastic. 185 countries were involved. There's only 193 countries in the world, so this was almost all of them. They were supposed to meet 5 times, and at the 5th one have a treaty. They met 5 times, they didn't have a treaty at the 5th one. They had a 6th meeting in August of this year, and they still don't have a treaty. The problem is that there are countries who argue for caps on production and caps on toxic chemicals, but there are other countries that emphasize recycling, waste management, and so on, and those are the oil and gas producing companies like Russia, Saudi Arabia, India, and the United States. So the fact that this isn't happening makes your individual effort even more important. So again, the answer is reduce production, and I had said some of it can be done by governments, maybe, but a lot can be done by individuals, and you will be happy like this when you have done these individual actions. So the main target is to reduce use, especially of single-use plastics, which, as I said, account for 40% of production and 60% of waste. This will reduce your personal exposure, and it will also reduce demand. So starting with so-called disposable plastic water bottles, they're a major source of microplastic pollution. What you should do is use a stainless steel water bottle instead, which many of us do. You don't need a whole library of them. Each one has a carbon footprint. You really only need one, maybe one at home, one at work. You can also use tap water instead of bottled water. Tap water actually has much lower levels of microplastics than bottled water, surprisingly. But a lot of the plastic in bottled water actually comes from the cap. How big of an environmental problem is this? This is enormous. Approximately 1 million plastic water bottles are used every minute worldwide, which means since we've had this meeting, 45 million plastic water bottles have been used. This equates to 1.4 billion every day. This to me is just awful. What else can you do? Single-use bags, like the ones you get in the grocery store, are also a major source of microplastics. They're banned in 12 states already. We had an unsuccessful effort here to at least create a fee. So the answer is to use reusable bags. I do know that there's a carbon footprint issue here, that a single-use plastic bag has a certain carbon footprint which is much smaller than either a paper bag or a non-woven polypropylene bag or a cotton bag. The cotton bag has the footprint of a cotton bag is 131 times the footprint of a single-use plastic bag. So you have to use it 131 times, or the equivalent of 131 times, to equate what you would have done with plastic bags. But reusable bags are generally bigger, so 131 uses is probably more like 65 uses. If you go to the grocery store once a week and you use that bag every day for a year, you've used it 52 times. So it's not that hard to do this, and it certainly is helpful. How big of an environmental problem is this? The world uses 5 trillion plastic bags in a year. The average American uses 365. In Denmark, the average person uses 4. So it is possible to reduce this. What else can you do? Plastic bags, again, for bagging produce, they shed microplastics. So use organic cotton mesh bags instead, and don't do what I did and order them without noticing they're made of polyester. Make sure they're cotton. What else? You can shop at greener grocery stores, and this is really cool. There is an effort done by Anna's group to evaluate the grocery stores here. We went into grocery stores. We looked to see whether they were giving out plastic bags, if they were selling their own reusable bags, if they were encouraging people to use reusable bags, and so on, and came up with a scorecard. The highest scoring ones, not too surprisingly, were Whole Foods with 36 points, Aldi's with 34, and Earth Fare with 33. The lowest, this is what they did. They eliminated plastic bags, they promoted reusable alternatives, and set goals for reducing plastic pollution. The lowest scoring ones were Walmart, Food Lion, Ingles, and Publix, and they had scores as low as 7 points. They showed a lack of substantial commitment to reducing plastic. You are probably right, yeah. Yeah, I think you are right. And they were in the report card. I think their score is in the middle. That's why they're not mentioned here. It's online, and Anna can tell you exactly where online. However, in 2023, MountainTrue put electronic trackers in discarded bags that were then put into recycling bins at different grocery stores to see where they actually ended up. And this is where Ingles redeems itself somewhat, and Food Lion also. Many of the bags, especially those from Ingles and Food Lion, ended up at the Trex Company Plastic Bag Recycling Center in Virginia that makes decking boards, so they went where they were supposed to go. But bags from other stores, especially Walmart, ended up as far away as Asia or in landfills, so they didn't get recycled. So if you end up with plastic bags from Walmart, take them to Ingles to get them recycled, or don't get them in the first place. So what else can you do? Plastic eating utensils are a source of microplastics. You put it right in your mouth. These little kits of metal spoons cutlery cost about $4. The bamboo ones cost about 50 cents. So those are alternatives you can carry around. What else can you do? Instead of styrofoam takeout containers or cups, ask for cardboard or bring your own. And then this is another cool thing. This is the Green Restaurant Association has actually gone into various restaurants, not just here, but all over the country, and scored them on things like, it's not just plastics, it's on everything. And then you can go on their website and look at the restaurants in your area and see which ones have scored highly. And in this area, this is a list of some of the ones. In particular, Green Sage has scored highly on this. So patronize these restaurants and tell the manager that that's why you did it. Give them some love for this. I'm often asked, and I ask myself, why can't I recycle styrofoam? Because styrofoam is such a huge thing that we always come across. There are several reasons. One is it's very light and it's huge, so the amount of volume for weight is just huge, and it would fill up your blue bin, it would fill up the trucks, it would fill up the landfill. That's one of the big problems. It's also contaminated with food, usually. And to shrink it down into something that's easy to transport and make into something else requires special, very high temperature processing. But you can recycle it if you know how. And one thing you can do is go to these hard to recycle events that are put on by Asheville Greenworks. Here are 3 of them. You can recycle styrofoam, also electronic items, all kinds of things you can't put in your bin, they will take. Go on the website and take a look. Also, there's this neat guy who has this truck called Feed Me Foam, and he has inside this truck one of those machines that will melt the styrofoam down into a usable brick of something. And he comes to these hard to recycle events. You can see him there. He also will come to your house if you have enough styrofoam. My son recently bought 7 pieces of easy to assemble furniture that came in cardboard boxes with all kinds of styrofoam. And after he was done putting it together, I put all the styrofoam in a pile, and I took a picture and sent it to him. And he said, yes, he'd come get it. And he did. And he told me that it was the equivalent of a single block of styrofoam that would have been 3 feet wide, 3 feet tall, and 9 feet long, just from those 7 pieces of furniture. That's huge. So try to patronize this. Also, Home Depot says on their website that they recycle the foam packaging that comes with appliances. What else can you do? This is a picture that went viral a number of years ago about a sea turtle with a plastic straw stuck up his nose, and it led to a lot of bans on plastic straws, which is a good thing. Plastic straws harm marine life. They expose us to chemicals. They're used for minutes, and then they just pile up and hang around for centuries. And there are 3 ways to avoid this. One is just don't use a straw. Just drink out of the glass. Not that hard. And then you can also switch to steel, glass, or bamboo, or paper. How big of a problem is this? Every day in the United States, we use 500 million straws. This would fill up 46,000 school buses in a year. What else can you do? Instead of using disposable Keurigs, get one that's refillable, or get a single cup coffee maker or a carafe coffee maker. How big of a problem is this? Between 50 and 60 million used pods are thrown out or recycled every day in the United States. What else can you do? Storing or heating food in plastic containers sheds microplastics and exposes you to them. Instead, use glass or food-grade silicone for them. And the silicone containers I really like because they compress and they're easy to store. What else can you do? Plastic cutting boards shed microplastics every time you use them. Use wood or bamboo instead. What else? Nonstick cookware is a source of microplastics. One scratch on Teflon can release thousands of microplastic particles. So go with ceramic or stainless steel or cast iron instead. What else? Plastic clothing. We all wear it, I think. Polyester, nylon, acrylic, spandex, they shed microplastics at every stage of their lives. When they're manufactured, when you wear them, and especially when you wash them, they shed microplastics into the water supply. And then at the end of life, when they get thrown out or whatever, they shed more. So the answer here is to buy organic cotton, bamboo, linen, hemp, or wool. Buy less, don't buy fast fashion, keep it longer, and don't wash it so often. How big of a problem is this? Fabrics are the largest source of primary microplastics, accounting for about 1/3 of global microplastic pollution. What else can you do? Plastic bottles that contain things like laundry soap and so on shed, and shampoo, things like that, shed microplastics into their contents. So instead, use bar soap. Remember when everybody used bar soap? Just go back to that. You can also get shampoo in the form of bars. And then you can also get laundry strips instead of those gigantic containers of laundry soap. You can also look for products that are concentrated and then put them into glass containers where you dilute them. What else can you do? You can speak to store managers about unnecessary use of plastics. So Here's a guy who has on his iPad this talk, and he's talking to the store manager, and he's saying, you have irresponsible use of plastic in your store. And they talk about it, and then they reach a conclusion, and the guy says, I'm not going to do this anymore. Just kidding, but it's not going to go like this. But if enough people talk to store managers, something will probably get done. Compliment store managers when you see avoidance of plastic use, like this gentleman who has these large containers instead of little containers of whatever that is, coffee beans or so on. What else can you do? Write to corporations. Sign up for petitions with groups like Public Interest Research Group. This actually has worked, this particular group. In 2024, Amazon phased out plastic air pillows from their North American shipments, saving an estimated 15 billion air pillows worth of plastic every year, just from people signing petitions. And then also Costco committed to reducing its plastic packaging and increasing its recycling efforts, reducing its plastic footprint by 17 million pounds. So get involved with groups like this. What else can you do? You can sign our petition. There are 2 copies of it. They're exactly the same. So if you signed one, you don't have to sign the other. But this is asking local retailers to voluntarily reduce the use of single-use plastics. Since we can't get it through the legislature, at least maybe we can convince stores to do it on their own. You can educate your friends and family. This meeting is available by Zoom, right? Yeah, so after this, you can still access it on the Sierra Club website. What else can you do? Don't despair. I hope I have made you uncomfortable, okay? But you don't have to do all this at once. There's evidence that your body can rid itself of some microplastics. So if you reduce the rate at which you're exposing yourself, eventually the amount that may be in your body will go down as you gradually excrete it in various ways. Look for improvement, not perfection. I will confess I have a few Ziploc bags in my kitchen and some plastic wrap, so I'm not perfect either, but do as much as you can. Every change you make is a step in the right direction. Join our group, that's another thing you can do. And remember that you're doing this not only for yourself, but for your children and your grandchildren who are going to be exposed to that doubling and tripling of plastic in the environment in the years to come. And that's all I have to say.
When you have questions, let's pass the microphone around. Does anybody have a question? Yeah, Rob has the microphone.
And I've got a question online while we're waiting for people to get the microphone. The question was, can we get a copy of your presentation slides?
Will you post them with us on our website?
Yeah, I'll send
Yes. So the answer is yes.
Okay.
The whole talk you can access on the website.
Yeah, this program is recorded, so you can go to wncSierraClub.org and you'll find this program there. It'll probably be next week before we get it out there, but you can get it there. You can let other people who missed it if they want to see it.
So my question has to do with
Closer to your mouth. Don't know. Is it turned on, Rob? Okay, well, we'll get you another one. Ken, do you have another question online?
It's on its way.
Do you have another question?
Yes. I have to find it.
He got it.
Okay, good. My question for you is, what is the mechanism that moves plastic across the cell membrane into the cells of the body?
I said I was going to share with you what I've learned so far, and that particular mechanism I haven't come across. Have you read something about that?
I have not. I was just really curious, though, as to, and, do they get filtered out by the nephrons of the kidneys?
Yeah, I don't know. My husband is right there writing down questions I should get answers to, so next time I will know the answer to that question.
Very good. Thank you very much.
They do cross the blood-brain barrier, in the lungs, the GI tract, and the placenta, but I don't know the specific mechanisms.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Okay.
It's a question for Anna. Somebody has plastic cutting boards that they want to get rid of. How can they dispose of them without creating more problems?
I think the best thing to do is to put them in the trash.
Just put them in the trash, they go to the landfill?
Yeah, they cannot be recycled.
Okay.
My question for both of you is, should we give up on plastic recycling?
So we have, I know I gave a lot of doom and gloom about plastics recycling, but if you do want to recycle plastics, the best things that can be recycled are plastic bottles and jugs. So think about water bottles or Coke bottles, and then like milk jugs and things like that. Almost everything else can go in the trash. So keep that in mind. They used to tell you numbers 1 through 7 to make it easy for us to remember what can go into the recycling. That's not really the case. It all depends on the type of resin and like the color and the shape. So if it's a bottle or a jug, it's probably recyclable. Anything else is probably for the landfill.
Let me add one thing to that, because I was very confused about so-called clamshells. Those are the things that berries and lettuce and stuff like that come in. I don't even know what number they have on the bottom, but you cannot recycle those, and I couldn't find out why until I recently ran across why. It's because the type of plastic they're made of, but also the way they're made. They're formed over a mold like this. They're not like blown like bottles are. They're formed over a mold, and they're very brittle, and when they get compressed, the recycling machinery thinks they're paper, and so it goes into the wrong stream. So unfortunately, I get tons of clamshells. You can't recycle those. You have to put them in the trash.
Yeah, that's just a case of, because I think those are actually labeled as a 1 type of plastic, and that's one of the reasons why plastics recycling is so confusing, because it's a 1, but it can't be recycled. So really just think in terms of jugs and bottles.
We were down in Wilmington and Oak Island, and Oak Island said clamshells were okay, so there's some, seems like there's discrepancy. Oak Island says, yeah, put clamshells in, they're okay there. Maybe they have a different machine, I don't know.
Yeah, they might have different machines at their recycling facility.
Yeah, do either one of you know where you can recycle those? Do you know where you can recycle Amazon plastic bubble packs? Or
So those can, if you obviously puncture them to get the air out, but you can stick those technically in with your, if you have plastic grocery bags and take those to a grocery store, you can put all that stuff together.
And thank you. And a related question is, like, a lot of items come in plastic. They're not bags, but they're plastic film. Can you put those with the plastic bags as well, you think?
I'm not sure what, do you mean like saran wrap, that kind of stuff? I mean, but
If you buy tofu or so many, like cheese, it all comes in this plastic film. It's not a bag,
yeah,
but
I think you, as long as it's not contaminated by the food, I think you can
Right,
put
you
that
won't
in with
remove
the grocery bags and that sort
that's
of
what I've been doing. I know.
Two suggestions. One, I have recycled those bubble wraps at UPS, so they will use it for their repackaging. Like in Westgate, they'll take, I mean, you just walk in the door and hand it to them, and they say thank you. Upstairs, if you might check it on your way out, has been, I didn't check it today, but they take that plastic, thick kind of plastic, like you'll get mailing from your medicine bottles or something through the mail, and they make it into decking for your house. So bring all those heavy plastic things up here to UNCA.
As far as the plastic bags, if it looks like a grocery bag, you can stick it in to go to the grocery store, but make sure it doesn't have any paper glued to it. I think that's the case.
I'll make a plug real fast. Kirby does an amazing tour. If that's something, I don't know if Sierra Club, if y'all do like group outings, but if you can get a tour at Kirby, it's fascinating. And they tell you all sorts of stuff you don't know.
Is there a minimum number of people?
I don't know. I would guess like maybe 10 or something.
A couple other things that the needle exchange program through WinCap needs your plastic laundry bottles. If you still have those, you can contact Michael Harney. For bubble wrap and things like that, you can take them to your Habitat stores where people donate plastic bags and other packaging materials for people's purchases. Both Habitat stores welcome those. I was very concerned to see all the plastic bottles during Helene, but what alternatives do people have? But I've heard that drinking from a plastic bottle sitting in the sun is really not okay. And I was so glad when we had Sophia, whoever Sophia is, when they started having carbon box water. But could you comment about plastic sitting out in the sun for hours?
Adding heat to plastics in any way, as I mentioned, cooking in plastic or just having bottles out in the sun will increase the rate at which microplastics are shed.
As far as foods that you can purchase that are in plastic bottles, is there any rule, I mean, when you're not going to heat that bottle or anything like that, is there some rule, perhaps the recycling number on that bottle or any, or if it says no BPAs, no phthalates? I'm thinking, for instance, I get a great organic olive oil at Costco for a great price, but it comes in a plastic bottle. So I guess I'm just looking for sort of a hard and fast rule that I won't cross. As far as consuming foods that are stored in plastic, is it just a no-brainer that you cannot do that?
I'll jump in real fast, but I like what Chris said, like, don't feel like you have to do everything all at once. Take the things that feel manageable to you. Certain things can exacerbate the leaching of the chemicals Chris was talking about, and that's typically heat and fatty foods. So what that means is if you have a food wrapped up in plastic and it's super fatty and hot, I think my example typically is like, I love Mexican food. I forget to bring a takeout box with me sometimes, and they always give you styrofoam box. And so that's like kind of like all the don'ts in one little situation. But yeah, I mean, we're all human, right? So do what you can with what you've got. Sometimes things are price limiting for folks. But you know, if you can afford an alternative in a tin bottle instead, it's something to think about. I don't know if you want to add.
Also, acidic products tend to, in addition to fat, acidic products tend to cause more shedding. But with regard to large items like Costco, it's actually, if you think about the ratio of the packaging to the volume of food inside, buying a big one is better than buying a little tiny one where you've got more packaging than you do food. So you can feel a little less guilty about buying that at Costco as opposed to buying a little plastic bottle.
I'm still, I guess I won't give up on recycling, but I have to say I'm skeptical. I mean, you see, people keep saying you can do this or they will take this, but that doesn't mean it's going to end up anywhere. And I keep thinking of this less than 10%, you know, that's not much, you know. So all these, I'm just a little skeptical. I'll keep trying, but I think maybe I'll stick to Anna's rule of just jugs and bottles and forget the rest.
I don't think what we're saying is that 10% of what is attempted to be recycled is recycled. I think we're saying 10% of all plastic is recycled. Do you agree?
Yeah, 10% of all plastic produced. But yeah, I think, you know, I feel like the answer, it's not a yes or no answer, it's a yes and. Yes, let's recycle what we can, but that's not the only solution. Let's also limit what we buy that's wrapped in plastic. Let's get producers to take responsibility for how they package things. It's gonna be, there's no one silver bullet. It's a yes and to everything, I think.
There's a question from online. What about filling water bottles halfway and then freezing them to make ice cold water? What does that do to the risk?
That sounds awful. Because you're expanding the bottle. I mean, I picture in my head little micro cracks or something that will shed microplastics. I haven't read anything specifically, though. Have you?
Not to that effect, but I guess, the things that exacerbate microplastics or the formulation of microplastics are friction, temperature change. What else? I mean, just think of plastic it can be strong, but it can be quite brittle when you put it out in the sun. It fades, it weakens. So the more we kind of manipulate plastics that way, the weaker they get, and the more they'll kind of break down into those microplastics.
So I heard that the recycling people here in Asheville don't have a producer to buy things like dark colored glass bottles, like say your vitamin bottles that are coming. Is it better, I guess, what is the best thing to do? To still buy the glass bottles for things like that, or to buy the plastic bottles?
Glass is almost always better than plastic. I wasn't aware that Kirby can't handle dark colors. Did you know that?
I didn't know that. I know sometimes they might have to, sometimes they might have to stockpile certain types, because when we recycle, everything has to be kind of like combined by type. So, if you have a brown bottle, you need a whole carton of brown bottles before you send it off to whoever buys it from you from the recycling. So maybe there's not that many brown bottles, and they just have to hold on to them and then until they have enough for a buyer to be interested. That's kind of how I interpret it.
I wanted to share with you, it was new to me, instead of having my laundry soap in the big as I could get, I've started using, I think you referred to them as laundry strips. If I can use the name Clean People and Earth Freeze or Breeze, Earth Breeze. I mean, it's amazing just to pull out one or two and you have no plastic bottle, and it's really cool, and there's your laundry. So just encouraging you to think about, you don't have to buy a laundry detergent bottle.
Question in the back?
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
So picking up on that discussion about the water bottles that are left out in the sun, on the opposite end of the spectrum, if you freeze food and put it in a cold Tupperware container, is the microplastic still going to migrate into that food or not?
If you then heat it?
No, don't heat it. You just leave it frozen, and then when you reheat it, you take the food out and put it in a stainless steel pot. So if it's frozen, the food is frozen, you put it in a cold Tupperware container, because I have a bunch of Tupperware, I don't want to throw it out to the landfill, right? So I use, for cold, for freezing. So in that case, do the microplastics migrate into the food if it's frozen?
I haven't read that specifically. Have you?
I haven't either.
I mean, I wouldn't think it would. What?
Probably will when you thaw it out, though.
But I'm not heating the container. I'm just heating the food in something glass.
Something else. That's probably a pretty safe way to do it, but I don't know for sure.
Okay, thank you.
So I have a question about plastics and with babies and children, such as, say, putting formula in a baby bottle and feeding, plastic bottle, feeding a baby. Is that safe? And also with children, they're playing with toys. Sometimes they put things in their mouth and handling them. So is there any kind of risk through those mediums?
Yes. In a word, yes. Their children are exposed in lots of ways. You do know that plastic baby bottles are now BAPA-free or free of a particular type of BAPA. But children are especially at risk for this because they are still developing. And so they're more at risk for things that affect development, the neurological system and things like that. Also, they're smaller. So the ratio, again, of plastics to them is greater. So children are really at risk through all the means you mentioned.
And I don't know if y'all remember, this was when I don't remember, maybe 20 years ago, there was a lot of commotion around BPA in water bottles, and especially in Nalgene bottles. BPA was banned in children's toys first, before bringing it up to the masses for the rest of us. So there is a little bit more attention to children and what they're ingesting, for the reasons that Chris just stated, but we still have a long way to go. Would you say 25% or 25 percent of the toxins have been studied?
Oh, of the chemicals, yeah, only 25%
Yeah.
of the chemicals have been studied.
Yeah, and we have thousands of chemicals yet to study, so.
Yeah, and one thing that often happens is called regrettable substitution. So one chemical will be found to be harmful, and that one will no longer be used, but another one will be substituted that is almost the same thing, but just hasn't been found to be helpful yet.
Okay, one more question and a couple of comments. Do laundry sheets contain plastic?
Laundry sheets.
The ones,
Oh,
I'm going to guess no because they're biodegradable.
I don't think so, but again, I've never,
Yeah,
yeah, it's a great question.
okay. There were a couple of comments online, or several, that wanted to thank you guys and say it was a great presentation. So thank you, and I'll turn it over to Judy.
And we have one last question, and then we'll wrap up.
I was just going to say that I see all kinds of things on social media. I use laundry sheets myself, but I see all kinds of stuff on social media from producers of laundry sheets that say, all of these ones have plastic in it, ours does not. So I actually think you need to vet the laundry sheet that you're using as well.
Okay, thank you.
Well, we want to say thank you. That was very informative to Dr. Chris and Miss Anna. And we will ask for the slides, and of course it is recorded, and all of our recordings are on our website, WNC Sierra Club. Want to invite you back 1 month from now, November 5th, for, oh my gosh, the celebration of Helene, right? What's happening with the river, the French Broad, the Swannanoa, and what's happening with that. So please come back, same time, same place, and if you can't come, there is a Zoom link. Please come to our fundraiser on the 16th at the Unitarian Church and meet our endorsed and our elected officials. So thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.